Larry Goldberg is driving like crazy. Well, okay, I think actually he's very relaxed because he's in his Cybertruck and he has, of course, FSD now in the Cybertruck. So he's probably having a lovely time uh, traveling across country on his way down to watch the Starship take off on Sunday. We all hope that takes place. And of course, the other part of that Starship journey is not just going to be whether or not it accomplishes all of its tasks, but we're going to see a landing of back with the chopsticks. And so that should be quite the deal. I'm looking forward to that this week, even more than football, believe it or not. Yeah, actually, a lot more than football. That'll be quite the deal. I was going to drive down there myself or fly down there, but this just was not the right week for it. It's so much else going on. So anyway, let's talk about today. I've already given two shows earlier today with regard to what took place on last night, and there's constantly new information coming out. So this is kind of an event that's taken place at about four different levels. First of all, there was the 20-minute or 30-minute event itself, where Elon came out and spoke, explained the rules of the game, explained his vision for the future, and basically, as I mentioned in a couple of places here and there today, basically said, look, this is the future, which is going to be a lot better than the future that you currently envision. And unlike when you go to a World's Fair or you go to Disneyland to the Futurama or whatever they call Futurama, I forget what it's called exactly, Futurama, right? You look at the things that are in there and you're like, well, maybe, maybe not. These might be coming in 10 or 20 years. Things like we saw 25 years ago, like flying cars and whatnot. Will they ever really actually happen? But the difference is that when Elon is laying out his vision, yeah, it might take 6 or 8 years to get to full self-driving with no hands and no, sleeping in the back seat. But we're pretty confident it's eventually going to happen. And he must have a lot of confidence it's going to happen now because they're really planning for the next round of all of this. So basically, so round one was here is Elon speaking and setting up the evening. Then there was the party. And a lot of people were confused. I was confused. I said on my first show this morning, I'm like, well, okay, this is kind of a weird event. It's great for the people that attended. I guess it was like 2,500 people there. Great for the people that attended. They got to do all these fun Disneyland kinds of things. But for those of us in the home audience, we're like, wow, that was not so great. Now then, round two. And that would be all the things that took place at the event with people videoing and also taking stills and putting those things up on X. And that created a lot of activity. And there was things with regard to Optimus and what Optimus was able to do. And we had all kinds of conversations earlier today about whether it was truly autonomous, or whether in fact there were, some people behind those voices, and especially, but also behind the movements of those robots. And we've decided, yes, there was at least some help with regard to the movements, and definitely all the voicing. The voicing was being done by humans, not by automation. So, but it was interesting and fun to watch Optimus, and Optimus does move a lot better, lots more smoothly, and you can really see, the tremendous advances that are taking place with Optimus. Of course, then there were the actual things that were presented. So you had the cyber car or cyber cab. You had the cyber van, very futuristic, interesting looking things. You had the rolling out of the plan that, by next year we'll be having our Model 3s, Model Ys, and actually the S's and X's he added on the end. All of them will be able to be driven while you're sleeping in the back sometime in 2025. And then in 2026 or early 2027 is when the cyber cab is supposed to come out, and then no notice on exactly when the cyber van will come out. Okay, so then, what about the robot? Well, no new real updates on the robot in terms of when it's going to come out, other than what we've already been anticipating and expecting. Then there become all kinds of speculation today. Will the Model 2.5 really just be a version of that model of the RoboCab that we just looked at? Maybe a little longer version. Maybe it'll have 4 seats. but maybe it'll kind of be basically the same vehicle. I don't think so. I could be wrong. I'm more along the line of it's going to be a version of the Model 3 that will be maybe a little shorter and have some kind of a hatchback instead of the kind of SUV kind of look to it. Just a kind of a smaller, less expensive version of the Model 3 that can be done for under 30,000. That would be my analysis, but who knows? We'll see, what happens with regard to that. So the question then becomes, should Tesla have come down by 9 points or 9% today? Should it have lost $50 billion or $60 billion in market cap today because it didn't hit the allure in terms of the event that everybody expected it to? Well, that's always a big question after some of these kinds of events. And so the reality is that probably what you're looking at is a pulling back from the positive expectations. All right. So the run up, remember, was 83% to the high, to 262 or whatever it got to. That run up was about 80 something percent, 84, something like that percent over the low of 144, I believe it was, earlier this year, just 6 months ago. So you've got people going way out here with the expectation of a bunch of things. I mean, everybody had different expectations. The expectations were all over the place. So it wasn't surprising that when your expectation wasn't met, maybe you trimmed. When somebody over there, that expectation wasn't met, maybe they cut it in half. Your expectation over here was really high, and you were really only in it for the short term anyway, and so you're out. Okay. So then you get this balancing, and a lot of folks are getting in at these levels because it's bargain basement time. So where does it all kind of come out? Well, right now it's coming out at about 120 bucks. I'm sorry, $220, and we'll see if we can, gin it back up over time. A few folks on X today were saying, yeah, they expect to go back. As soon as people kind of get what's going on, we'll still be going back up into the 300 range. I'm not as convinced, mentioned this morning, that I think maybe what we're going to do is we're going to have to see what happens on the 23rd with the earnings call. And there might be some announcements there. There might be some good news or bad news there. And then we're going to be getting into the end of the year and the beginning of next year when we're supposed to be hearing more about Juniper and about the Model 2.5. If Juniper's announced and Juniper is anything like we expect it to be, and I think it will be, I think it'll be everything we expect it to be. But I had a conversation, as I mentioned, with an employee from Tesla. This individual believes that that Model Y will blow out when it gets the same stuff as the Model 3. It'll be unbelievable what happens to the numbers on Model Y. Okay, we're going to the future, but we're not at the future yet. And the future, in the case of the Model Y, is it needs to be updated. It needs to get all that stuff that the Model 3 has. And I've been saying for a long time that I think that is going to really gin the stock. So if we get some Model Y reveal, or we get, the various different social media guys, the really big hitters in the influence world, to go out and drive the new Model Y, and we see what it's got and make sure that it has all the things that we're expecting, I think then the stock will get back up into this 260, 265 range again. But we need the Model 2.5 then to get to the next level. So then maybe if that comes, I don't know which one's going to come first and second, but as we get those two deliveries and we're actually shipping them, and they're actually at the right price, and they actually look good, they actually do everything we expect, now we might be able to get into that 265 to 300 range again. And then Elon says we'll be sleeping in the back seat next year in California and Texas, and we'll be putting our cars out to make money. Okay, so he didn't say when. He didn't say first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. He said next year. So that will be the big one. That'll be the one that'll take us back to all-time highs. That'll be the one that will be the ChatGPT moment. I mean, that's really what it's all about. That's what everybody was hoping for at the event the other day, is some kind of certainty. I think it was I can't remember whether it was Bradford or Lutz, maybe it was all of them said certainty. It was Bradford. He said, yeah, everybody's looking for certainty. They want to actually see that people are going to be able to sleep in this car instead of drive it. So that's where we are with regard to Tesla right now. That's what I think is going to happen with the stock. But what do I know? What about today's action in the rest of the stock market? Okay, so I didn't do it. I ran out of time at the end of prep this morning, but the University of Michigan they're not confidence. What's theirs called? Anyway, they're basically consumer confidence numbers. They came out today. And guess what? They were not good at all. And this does not bode well for the Kamala Harris campaign. So if you thought you had any chance at all with your numbers falling through the floor right now, Kamala, if the Michigan survey is any indication, then this is not going to be good for the campaign. So the consumers were not confident about the near term or the long term. Their numbers had gone up last month, but now went down again this month. Their inflation expectations were up this month after being down last month. So everything about the consumer right now, the consumer is like, no, this is not good. I'm not happy at all. They must be seeing something, at the grocery store. Certainly, I don't think at the gas pump, but at the grocery store or in their fuel bills. Or, in terms of people maybe starting to see some layoffs or whatever it is, and the confidence numbers were down. So market still said, hey, it's okay. We're still going to keep going up, because what did they see? They saw these bank numbers come out, and the bank numbers were good across the board. All the banks did very well in the first earnings reports. We'll have a lot more earnings reports next week. But the ending result here was the Dow up 409, even after consumer confidence numbers. We got the NASDAQ up 60. We've got the S&P up 34. Tesla, of course, was down 21. Magnificent Seven, Apple down a bit, and NVIDIA down a penny, but the rest were up. And the Cathie Woods, I believe, were also mostly up, Square being the one that wasn't. So what is the market saying? Well, I read listened to one long article today that was talking about the idea that there isn't right now an election trade taking place yet. This individual had gone out and talked to a lot of different institutional buyers out there, and none of them have put in their election trade yet. And he says, usually this close to the election, you're starting to see that. Well, again, without being political at all here, so let's take my political hat off for a minute and just try to be neutral. What we've seen, 2 weeks ago, Kamala had all the momentum. She was 6 points up on the betting. She was, 2 to 3 points up on the popular vote, and it was tied, sometimes slightly in her favor in terms of the Electoral College. This Nate Silver's analysis and all these different people that were analyzing it said, man, this is a tight race. That just is not the case anymore. Just not the case. So right now, maybe it was so tight, there was no trade. But now it's becoming very, very clear that unless something happens in the next 3.5 weeks, this is Trump's. It's not even close at this point. The betting is way to the Trump side at almost 10 points to the Trump side, 9.3. I think the last time I looked. You've got the Real Clear Politics showing over 300 Electoral College votes for Trump right now. So the swing states are all going his way now in terms of the polling. So Nate Silver, is starting to show some of the same things. So overall, at this point, for somebody who's trying to be neutral and say, I want to place my financial bet right now on what's going to happen 3 weeks from now, it would be time where some of those would start to say, okay, this is Trump's to lose. It looks like he's got it. How do I play that? And again, change of government generally results in a better, faster. you stay with the same government, you still might get a good year, but it takes longer for the year to get its legs, if you will, especially when you've got kind of a so-so business environment right now, especially for small business. Remember, small business is terrible right now. Okay. There was another report out today. Small business ain't doing well. All right. And that's 60% of the business out there. I just visited one of my clients yesterday, and he says, September was just horrible, and October's starting off not so well either. So this is kind of where we are. The economy is saggy in the places where the great bulk of the voters are living, which is under $100,000 a year in household income. Maybe they own a small business, and that's commonly under $100,000 a year in household income, and they're scratching. There was a report the other day. No, it wasn't a report. I think it was a personal situation. It was that client of mine who talked to this lady who lived in New Hampshire, and she has to drive like 45 miles to her closest Whole Foods. And she likes to go in every few weeks and buy a bunch of specific things at Whole Foods. So she drives to the beach in New Hampshire, about 45 minutes away. And while she's there, she says, nobody's, everybody's just throwing stuff in the, putting stuff in the shopping cart. No problem. Yeah, oh yeah, I'll have a little this, a little that. Not a care in the world. She goes back home. She goes to her local grocery store in her own town, inland and not as a fancy neighborhood. And she says, people actually have their calculators out, and they're going, well, I don't know. Should I put this back, or should I, and that was kind of it's just you can't take that to, you can't publish that and say, okay, here's what's really going on out there. But, it gives an indication of what we feel like we're seeing anyway right now in the marketplace. So if in fact it's Trump's to win, and if people begin to believe that, then they're going to believe that the business is going to do well after the victory. There's other reasons, of course, too, like, for instance, cutting regulations and, decreasing taxes and things like that would be more, business friendly, if you will. And even though Kamala has been talking about some kinds of business friendly things, like giving new businesses a big tax credit, to help them get their business started, I don't think people necessarily believe that she's going to follow through on those things, because even her surrogates are out there saying, oh, don't worry. She's not going to do the thing she's saying. I mean, this is literally happening. Here's Larry. Larry's finally going to be able to join us for the last 7 minutes. Larry, are you there? Come in. Where are you? I saw your name. Now we need to see you. Larry, are you there? Yeah, here he comes. Hey, Larry.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? You out in the middle of where?
I'm in the middle of Texas. I'm in a town called Victoria,
Okay.
and I'm headed towards Kingsville, Texas, which I'm sure you don't know this, but it happens to be the site of of Tesla's lithium plant.
Oh, you're going to go down there and check out the lithium plant before you go
Well,
to.
I pass it as a matter of course every time I go, so I always photograph it. I think they must be very close to done there, very close to done. Well,
Yeah.
based upon what I saw last time, so I imagine that they're going to start initiating that plant early next year.
Very nice. Very nice.
Uh,
Well, Larry,
yeah,
we only really have about 6 or 10 minutes here, because I got to get off to my daughter's wedding. But
I understand.
let's I want to hear your major takeaways. I'll just shut up and I'll let you give me your major takeaways from what you saw last night and the follow on all last night and this morning.
I don't think you want to hear what I have to say.
Believe me, I've already given the good, the bad, the ugly. Okay, so
I didn't anticipate a lot, as you know, from last night, and I got less than I expected. The dates are later than we had hoped. There was no app. We didn't see the app. I thought we were going to, everybody was going to call their ride on the app. We I mean, the one plus of last night, I think it was a big plus too, was the van.
Ah,
I think the van was a pretty big plus, but I think it's going to be, 2026 before we see that van. I think that van is focused on the Boring Company. I
oh,
think
yeah,
that
I thought so. Yeah, yeah,
I think that's the ideal transport for the Boring Company.
sure.
Um, so, my own take on it was that that my expectations were low, and they delivered less than my expectations. I think it was a bad call to have that business, and I think we should have had that much closer to the introduction of the lower cost car, of the lower priced car. I think that would have been much better if we'd actually had the introduction of the low price car at the same time as we did this. But I mean, I think the another positive another positive out of last night was, I think, the Optimi that they showed, the 20 Optimi that they showed,
Uh-huh.
was fairly impressive, actually, that they had that many, and they were able to do that much in terms of activity. But on balance, I have to say that it was a disappointing night, and I'm not surprised at the stock action.
So what did you think of the RoboCab itself? It was pretty close to what we anticipated.
Exactly what we anticipated. Yeah. I heard this morning people saying that they didn't think that the swing doors would be able to work in a parking space.
Huh.
Somebody said, well, they're not going to park the car. Other people said, well, that's nonsense. Of course they'll have to park. So there was a sense amongst the conversation of this morning that they will pretty much have to have a change in those doors. That those, but on balance, I didn't see. It was a big disappointment to me, and I'm very pleased I decided to go to Boca Chica to see the IFT5 launched rather than go out there.
Right.
I would have never been able to make it because of family commitments and so on. So just turned out I couldn't go whatever the opportunity was, because I had to be home, that night.
I haven't talked to any of the partiers yet. Maybe tomorrow I'll get a couple of the partiers on those, but I think that the party sounds like it might have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I spoke to quite a few people who were at the party today.
Okay.
We were on a conference call, and several of the people were there, and they felt it was well worthwhile because they were able to speak to quite a lot of people on the team, and they were able to speak to quite a lot of interesting people at the event, and so that for them was of great value. So in a way, I'm kind of sad about how the event wasn't exactly, well targeted, but on the other hand, I would have liked to have been at the event to meet up with, of course, old friends, but also some of the people who were there. It would have been quite interesting. I'd love to have spoken to the chairman of what's it, the Chrysler company? Stellantis, yeah. I'd love to ask him what he got out of the evening without asking him too precisely, why, what was his interest. Anyway, that would have been interesting. And that was an eye-opener. Look, on balance, nothing has changed in terms of our, assessment of the company. Nothing has changed in terms of the story. I think Dan Ives said it pretty well. But I don't think this advanced Tesla in the minds of the investment community.
Right.
That it advances Tesla in the minds of the Tesla community. That's a positive. The fact that it was a really nice party, that's a positive. But yeah, those are my comments.
Larry, the funny thing is, and maybe Elon doesn't even know this, but the vast majority of humans have almost zero interest in the future. If you do a TV program about the future and it's funny and it's entertaining, people watch it, but they don't really care about what the future. They're just really trying to make sure they can pay their grocery bill, and they're not.
I think they're worried about their own future, though.
Their own future, but they're not sitting around wondering about flying cars. Now, there's a percentage, you, me, and others, there's a percentage, and we're all fascinated. We just can't get enough of what the future's going to be like. But it is not a large part of the population that cares.
Right.
And besides, they've been disappointed too frequently. They remember the Jetsons, and most of that stuff that was on the Jetsons never actually happened.
I'm wondering, what was the motivation for last night's event? And it was unclear to me. It was unclear.
That's why I brought it up. I brought it up because I think Elon said what his motivation was. He said, here's a dystopian future over here. And, he's talked like this before. Here's a dystopian future, but we could have a great future. This is his life story. He wants a great future for all of humanity. And he's saying, this is what it's going to look like. Here, we'll put these toys, these new products in a future setting in a movie lot, and we'll show you what it's going to look like. And that's why I'm saying it's kind of like, well, maybe if you had a regular program every week on Wednesday night that we could watch, people would be interested.
I understand. I get it. By the way, I on my way here in my beautiful Cybertruck.
Yes.
FSD is, the difference between my last trip down here on the X with FSD, whatever version of the previous, major release, and this version is like night and day.
Oh.
The car is so much more assured. Its actions are so much better. I've had some interventions simply for comfort.
Yeah.
I haven't had a single really, one intervention. So far, one intervention. I'm about 1,500 miles on the trip, and I've had one serious intervention.
Okay.
The road kind of ran out. There were 4 lanes, and the one lane just ran out without due warning, and I was right next to a truck. I had to slam on the brakes. But that was an intervention that was really because of really bad road repair that they hadn't marked. But other than that, no interventions. Almost, other than for some comfort, like I decided to get off at a point because I wanted to get a drink of water and so on.
Right.
But fantastic drive down. The car is so impressive. It's incredible. Incredible.
You may have to move to Texas, Larry, or move to California if you want to sleep in the back seat.
Yeah, exactly. I can probably set up house in this car without a problem. All right. Well, I thought I would I was running later than my schedule, but I thought I would try and get a few minutes in.
Well, I'm glad you came on and you're not alone in your analysis. And I talked this morning about, I gave some of the same positives, a few more positives, because there's a lot of stuff. Well, there's a lot of stuff happening after the show, Larry, and maybe, when you get to your destination, you might check X and see some of the stuff that's popping now, ideas that have come out. AJ and Alex and others are talking about some things that are pretty interesting about the cybercab itself and other things. But so there you can generate. There's some other things.
Yeah, I get that. I take all of that with a rather large pinch of salt. It's nice. It's a lot of fun, this kind of, imagination. But by the way, I read Eric Berger's book, that he's just put out about what I forget the name of the book actually. Eric Berger has just written. He's a writer about space and rocketry.
Oh,
He's just written I think it was called Reuse. It's about the story of Falcon 5.
oh, wow.
And he wrote a very, very good book about the story about Falcon 1, but this is about Falcon 5. Fantastic book. Outstanding writing. Outstanding book. Real insights. And then he ends with the last chapter where he decries, clearly from, you know, a fairly far leftish perspective on this terrible, you know, change in Elon Musk and so on.
Oh, I see.
This last chapter and how he thinks it's gonna affect. But you know, set that aside because
Yeah.
we just have to set these views aside. But the book itself, I want to tell you, is fantastic. So I highly recommend it. Highly recommend.
All right, Larry. Well, I gotta get out of here. So thank you so much for coming and joining, and to all of you,
Congratulations and have a great day, a great party. Yeah,
it's been great talking to you.